Good evening, afternoon, morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Worldwide Football. As always, I'm your host, Connor Pojuelo, here with my co-host, Matthew Rothman. And just before we get into anything, I would like for everyone to just sit still and take look at the image behind me. So, everyone, I want you to really examine who this is and why he looks the way he looks. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kyle Walker. If anyone is not familiar with who Kyle Walker is, let me bring you up to date on who Kyle Walker is. So Kyle Walker was a right back for has been a right back for Manchester City for the last, give or say, 7 years to be exact.
Yeah, seven,
He
eight
was
years
signed from
around.
he was signed in the 2017-18 season. He's 34 years old, and the word washed is an understatement to describe him. But to be fair, we could describe that for so many other of the City players in this current team. So let's get started, everyone. We've done this show for about 4 years now, and this is the first time we've ever made a City video where they're on the receiving end of our jokes, which is very new and very weird for us, considering we're all used to seeing complete dominance from this side. But considering all the circumstances with, lack of signings, aging players, Pep probably running out of ideas and overthinking again, and no Rodri, it's safe to say that Manchester City are having a very, very lackluster year, to say the least. I will hand it over to Matt. Matt, what do you think is going on at Manchester City that's causing them to be like this? Because with a record of damn near 1 win in 10 is actually insane.
Well, you said lackluster. I think that is an absolute understatement
Yeah, can we just say
because
ass? Let's just say
yeah,
ass. Yeah,
City
it's
themselves
ass.
like
It's
not
ass.
like even like by their standards, like even not even if like you go by their standards, it's obviously bad. But if you even just go from the point of just watching them each week, it's absolutely horrific. I mean, even just looking at them from a sense of how they defend, how they like especially the defense, like their attack hasn't been great, but looking
Oh
at
no,
that
their attack
defense
has been
is an
far from great. Like it's
absolute
honestly been
joke.
far. Their
But even
attack
that
right now
defense,
is carried by De Bruyne. Let's be real.
yeah,
Their attack is carried by De Bruyne
exactly.
because Haaland can't do nothing by himself. Silva's washed. Grealish has been useless for a large number of time. He has
And now against
44
him too.
games,
Yeah.
44
44
games
games
without a
without a
goal.
goal.
And any
And
other forward would have been slated for that. Not Grealish. I don't know
yeah.
why he's
But you know
getting
what's
away with
funny
it.
is that like their attack has been so bad, but their defense, it's what,
It's
23
even
goals and
worse.
10, 23 goals in the last 10 matches. I mean, how are you gonna survive with that? I mean, you're putting Rico Lewis. If you look at that last game against Juve, where they were totally dominated, I mean, they only had really one chance from what we saw all game, where it was like Holland, he completely missed it. But
Missed it.
and that was the one big
I don't
chance.
think this guy almost I don't think this guy had a shot, if anything.
Yeah,
Or maybe
but yeah,
he
it
didn't
was probably
score,
just
but
one
dude,
that he completely
he
messed
was
up on.
completely missing that game. He was so
Yeah, but
limited. And
if
that's
you
down
just
to
look at that,
Juve's structure.
yeah, if you just look at that back line, I mean, obviously we've mentioned Walker at the beginning. He looks absolutely
Oh,
beyond
he's
cooked.
cooked. He's cooked. His
Like,
pace is gone. His awareness has been an issue for the
yeah,
last like couple of years now at this point, and he's just
the
getting
second goal,
exposed for it.
especially to McKennie, that McKennie scored, Walker doesn't get back quickly enough and then just leaves McKennie that
It's
open
like
with
where
all
he's
that
at. You're
space.
letting McKennie score a scissor kick. Shout out to the American boys for Juventus for balling out that game.
Yeah,
Because both
way
of them
off.
came off the bench.
Genuinely
Both of them came
phenomenal.
off the
But
bench and made that goal happen.
yeah, and then Vardio, like I'll be honest, like I had a lot of expectations from, especially the past few years. I know last year he was pretty solid, but I haven't been too impressed. I'd say from a defensive standpoint, if I'm gonna be honest with him, over the past 2 years, I know like he has provided a lot of attacking output, but I don't think his defensive abilities have mirrored what I saw at least at Leipzig,
I
and
think
I
it's
think
because he's
that's what
limited
we've
now
seen this
onto
year.
how much he can go forward because, the setup right now that City has, they do play with a fullback on the left now. Beforehand in previous years, it used to be Ake on the left, which would provide a lot more going forward and back, especially back. You had Vardio that would almost be that makeshift center back that could transition to left back where he had more freedom to roam forward, which is why stats wise for a center back was incredible last season.
Yeah.
But I think now playing in this sort of system to where, he's doing a lot work defensively. I think yeah, it's been a weird transition for him. I still think the talent is still there, but it's not there at the very moment. And don't even get me started on the rest of the defenders. DS is like really
Diaz
trying
hasn't.
hard to hold it together, but even he hasn't been great.
Yeah.
Hasn't been great at all this season either. He's injured. Ake's injured as always. John Stones is injured as
And
always.
they're trying to plug Rico Lewis at left back and
Rico Lewis
sometimes
has
in the
been trying to be
midfield too.
plugged at left back, right back, CDM, almost like Josh Kimmich and Lam and all that. I'm like, no, he's not him. If anything, he's overrated.
And then, yeah, of course, the midfield, Gundogan has just looked completely out of it. I thought after last season at Barca, I thought he was one of Barca's better players that season. But
He was.
ever ever since he came back to City, it's like looks nothing like what we saw at his first iteration with City, and not what we saw last season with Barca. His abilities on the ball have been completely zapped, and his
Here's
awareness
the thing.
has
I think
gone out
Gundo
the
could
window.
still be decent enough, but he does way too much to where he almost likes to box crash a lot, and he doesn't have the energy to be running back all the time. This is Gundo we're talking about. You've seen what happens when he played in a double pivot with Germany, which is why whenever he did it at Barca, we needed to have someone next to him to at least somewhat provide more of that defensive stability. They don't have Rodri anymore. Kovacic does not provide any of that. And so when you have Gundo playing as a lone six, obviously you get what you pay for. He's gonna get ran through like that girl on OnlyFans that took 100 dicks in one day. Like what the hell?
No, that's still absolutely like incredible. Somehow how that ended up coming to be, but yeah, I mean, with this whole City team, like of course we could go through starting lineup, we could go through bench, we could go through their injuries, we could even mention Pep how like this has been probably the first time in his entire career where he's facing that adversity to the point where a lot of people are questioning, does he still have it with this City side? And I think that's where a lot of the questions begin, how he can get this City side that have been underperforming, that have a lot of these aging parts, that have a lot of players like your Jeremy Doku's, like your Jack Grealishes, who are not performing, who haven't really been performing, if we're being honest, for the past couple years as well. What do you think? Like, how do you think Pep's really going to get this ship rolling again? Because they're not doing well in the league. They're far behind Liverpool. They still, even if they
They're
have a chance,
fourth. They're fourth, only
yeah.
2 points ahead of Nottingham
And even
Forest.
Champions League, they're in danger of dropping outside the top 24. So, what gives for them?
Honestly, this reminds me a lot of when the year after Klopp won the league, going into the 2021 season. If anyone doesn't remember, it's the season where Chelsea won the Champions League against City. I remember when he had to deal with so many injuries to the point where he had to put his two sixes in Henderson and Fabinho at center back, had to bring in Ozan Kabak, a Bundesliga reject, over to his side. He had to play guys like Nathaniel Phillips and Reese Williams and all these guys at center back. They were lacking. They were extremely lacking. Here's the thing though. Klopp managed to work with what he had, and he still somehow miraculously got them top four.
Yeah.
Now that's Liverpool. That's Liverpool. Obviously, City is like, oh, you always have to challenge for the title, all
And
of that
even then, like those
essence.
players, like surely what City have are
But
surely
City
better
has a
than what
depth like
Liverpool had.
no other team has in the world. The
Yeah.
problem is a lot of their players just aren't performing up to co. Holland is just becomes more and more limited to the point where if you don't give this man the ball, he's doing nothing. Bernardo Silva's head is on it. Like Silva, somewhat De Bruyne, but I'm not going to go on De Bruyne because he's their best player. Gundogan. You could even say Kyle Walker, Ederson, who's been so dead the
Oh yeah,
last like five
Ederson
games
looks
to the point
really
where
poor.
Ortega started two of those games. It's like these guys' heads are already. It's like they have nothing left to prove. They're not hungry anymore. It's like their heads are already in Saudi, just thinking of the retirement life and wanting to cash in. You have Pep overthinking that Liverpool game where he tried playing Nunes on left wing when the guy's a central midfielder. Like, what sense does that make? And of course, Savinho, who he brought in after his stellar year at Girona last season. who has not really broken out to the team. Assist-wise, he's done well, but he's not being the Riyad Mahrez replacement everyone thought him to be. I'm sure there's still something that could be done there because he's still a very talented player. Phil Foden, who after one of his best ever seasons, last season, has just become a complete shadow of himself. Whether it's mental or not, who knows? Who knows why he's performing so bad? This entire City team, you could make this case that like from the team that Pep inherited to where you had all these old aging guys that clearly just could not be up to par anymore. You could also make the case with some of the players in this side. And maybe it's also just a case of, Pep clearly running out of ideas and him not knowing what to do without Rodri.
And I think the funny part is that I feel like, especially this stretch, it just kind of reinforces the confirmation that Rodri did deserve the Ballon d'Or. Now, of course, that could be an argument for a lot of people.
That's an
A lot of
argument we
things
made
that
in
people,
another video. So, to
yeah,
each their
what
own,
people
right?
want to say. But I want to get into Phil Foden because I know we saw from what we saw last season with City, he was absolutely phenomenal. He was named best player in the Premier League that season. Of course, there's arguments there, but top player in the Premier League that season, 19 goals, 8 assists, whatever. England, he doesn't do so well, but of course, like everyone knows, like with City, he has performed. Yet this season just looks completely out of it. I don't know if it's just you know sort of that form from England carried over,
I think
or if
that,
it's
yeah, like
just
I said, it's a mental thing. You think that thing might have really affected him? Like, really just messed up the confidence. Even in the games so far, when Tuchel came in as manager, I mean, still, like, you slap an England shirt on this guy, he's about as effective as Vinny is for Brazil. So, but yeah, no. So this team just it doesn't. It's not the same team as before. It's not that same, team that would strike fear into the hearts of their opponents. I mean, granted, they drop points to a lot of these guys. Their attack isn't the same. Their midfield is so weak and ineffective. Defense is outlandish. Goalkeepers are even. Ederson against Juve was horrific.
yeah. That first goal, I have no clue what he was doing on that
And even
one.
against Crystal Palace. Oh no, Crystal Palace was Ortega. There was another
Yeah,
game that he
Crystal Palace was
performed poorly
Ortega.
in, and it wasn't there was another game he performed poorly in. I'm trying to think of it.
But
I
even if
might.
you just go to that Juve game, that first goal should not be going in. If you're Ederson, like a lot of people call this guy world class, and I
Oh, it was
do have an
Spurs. It
agreement to
was the
that.
Spurs. It was I know it wasn't the Spurs. It was either the Spurs game or the Sporting or the
But even
Feyenoord
Spurs, they
game.
lost
It
4
was the
nil. So even
it was
if,
the Feyenoord game where they blew a 3-goal lead. Yeah,
oh
it was
yeah,
Feyenoord.
Feyenoord, yeah, he was
Hmm.
awful. He was at fault for all three. But yeah, if you just look at those two Champions League matches, like that first goal against Juve, like no matter what keeper you are, amateur or pro, you cannot be letting that ball go in.
Yeah, bro
Like the ball
dropped it. Let
straight
Ter
at you,
Stegen drops my
he literally
standards.
just hits the ball like to the left side of him, and it goes behind. I mean, you cannot have that happen to you. And of course, Feyenoord, three mistakes leading to goals. Just not acceptable at any level for that. And like Ederson, I've been a big fan of him. I think how he's molded into sort of that Neuer role, like that Pep really helped him with over the past like 5 6 years or whatever. I think has been great for him. Unfortunately, as you said before, I just don't think his head is there now. He's making too many mistakes. Like a lot of the mistakes I've seen him make, especially against Juve, especially against Feyenoord, are just mistakes you wouldn't think he would make. And you got to think there's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with a lot of these players where whether it's hunger, whether it's a confidence thing, or whether it's just Pep not getting to them now, it's something that's just not there anymore.
Yeah, I think it's just. And then there's a notion of Pep. Pep did sign an extension earlier. Could we look at the? I'm not going to be going on a limb here and say this is Pep's last season. He did make it clear that this is the last club he'll ever manage. Um, but I don't think this is his last season yet. I'm looking at this in the lens of where everyone saw Klopp beforehand during that injury-riddled season. Obviously, I'm sure he would like to have a lot of his players back. It depends on whether or not, they do manage to sign some kind of reinforcements in January. But let's be real, what kind of player would want to come to the club just to be Rodri's backup and hardly get any play time? We saw that try to happen with Calvin Phillips, and his career just went down the gutter. Um, Call it
Even now for
mismanagement or
like
what you
he's at
will.
what Ipswich now or whatever.
Yeah, he's at
Not even
Ipswich.
performing there.
And Pep's a complex guy, which makes him so good. It honestly depends on what he wants to do, whether he outputs another center back in midfield, plays three in the back. I can't tell you what City need to do in order to perform better. Their problems are the entire structure of the team and not knowing what to do with them. I can't speak for that. I can try, but obviously it's obviously not like he's gonna listen. He's gonna do what he can, and we're gonna see how that plays out on the pitch. I like the showing so far from Matthias Nunez. He was signed, I believe 2 seasons ago, was it that
Yeah,
Nunez was
would
signed
have been 2 seasons ago.
from
Yep.
Wolves, and he didn't really feature much. But so far, he hasn't been that bad. I think he's been one of their better midfielders, to be honest with you. Um, yeah, no, definitely a lot more utilizing, players like Doku and Savinho more, trying to sort out, of course, the whole discussion of who's going to be De Bruyne's replacement because as good as De Bruyne is, his body's clearly giving up on him
Yeah,
slowly
and
by
there's also the
slowly and
rumors of him
slower.
possibly going to the MLS as well, like after the season ends.
So a lot of big question marks to be raised here. Haaland, I don't know. Haaland would probably stay, but I mean, God knows who. I mean, Barca's calling if he wants. I'm never gonna say no to Haaland at Barcelona. All right, there we need a Levy replacement.
But the big question comes with Holland is, a lot of people, a lot of the criticism that has always been like given towards him has been the fact that he can't coexist on his own. Like he doesn't make things happen. He's basically one of those strikers that receives the ball and has to score, which isn't a bad thing because like, Lewandowski, we've seen him. He's basically been that role at Barcelona, so it's not a bad thing per se. But what do you think really is going to happen if like De Bruyne, who's that main cog in that Man City machine, where he's the one that's really splitting all those passes through, giving Holland those chances. When he leaves, like who exactly do you think will like could be that replacement? Because Foden hasn't
Well,
really
that's
performed
another
yet.
discussion that was being
So
had. There's not a suitable backup for Haaland. They got rid of that and they sent him to Atleti where he's been balling. Like, and here's the thing. I think most City fans, if any exist, should come to terms with the fact that the guy wanted to start, right? And unfortunately, when he was being played, obviously there'd be times where he's played on the wing, didn't like it. There'd be times where he played as a midfielder, and that just did not
yeah,
work
that
at
was
all.
I didn't understand that.
That only worked for like maybe 3 or 4 games max, and then it just stopped working altogether. He wanted to start. He's a starting level striker, clearly. But but yeah, no, when Haaland's having an off game, you need someone to be a goal outlet. I see a lot of City fans trying to talk about Joel McAtee being as a false nine, perhaps. I remember a certain player that would help get goals as well, but unfortunately, he's at Chelsea being their best player. So, that's a bit of a oopsie daisy on City's behalf. But it's hard. It's hard to say. It's clear to see that a lot of the aging players have got to go. They have to get replacements for it, which is why I'm assuming that, come this January or next season, they'll dip into their big ass checkbook and sign some players. Depends who they bring
pending
in. I
whatever
guess we'll
the
see.
That's also pending whatever the verdict was
And
from
of course, yeah,
all
they
those
still have the
charges.
whole thing with the 115 hanging over their heads. 115, I'm not talking the awesome Black Ops song from Zombies. No. I'm talking about the charges they have with the whole financial things. That'll be funny to see how it goes, but yeah. I don't see do we see City winning the league this season? No. I don't
Yeah, it
think
would
so.
be a very long road for
This
them to
title
get
is
there.
clearly going to be for either Arsenal or Liverpool, with Chelsea not being too far behind.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say Chelsea's I don't know. I wouldn't say they're a title contender yet because we haven't reached the midpoint of the season
Yeah.
and we've
Although,
seen,
like, the
but
interesting part is
yeah,
like Chelsea's schedule to the midpoint of the season's very easy, but then again, we just don't know enough about Chelsea's in their first
easy. But
like
keep in
season under
mind, this is
Mauricio.
not the
Yeah.
first time we would see. I don't believe in easy schedules, okay? I just saw my club back in November have an easy schedule and they barely scored any points. All right? No such thing as an easy schedule. For some reason, your club could just decide to play with zero brain cells and then not win any games and drop points against these teams. It can happen. And we've seen this happen with Chelsea. So
Yeah.
let's calm down for a bit. But yeah, this is their advantage, technically speaking, to put themselves further in the league table. But yeah, City at the moment, they have the Manchester Derby this weekend against another dead United side, which is probably going to be the most middest Manchester Derby we're going to see in a very long time.
Yeah, and
Matt
then they
doesn't
have
even
to
want to
play.
watch it.
Yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, I just don't know about that game if I'm being honest because it's like one of those where usually you'd be so hyped to watch that type of game, but it's just like now this season United are what 13th in the table and City have lost 9 out of their last 10, so or haven't won 9 of their last 10 because they have a few draws in, but yeah, nonetheless, it's probably the least hyped Manchester Derby in a long time because at least like the past few years, you could say City are amazing and United maybe they could pull something off, or maybe if you push back even further, both teams were really good or United was really good. City still have some talent, but now it's just like both teams basically at their worst facing each other. So yeah, you don't know.
Well, all they can really do is just survive until January. Even the game after, they have Villa at home, which is
Yep.
not easy at all. So, I mean, hey, if as long as we don't get another quote of him wanting to harm himself, I think it should be
Oh,
fine.
jeez.
I made a TikTok on that a while ago. If we get more classic golden images like this one, I think it's just funny. The fact that he actually commented over this and said unacceptable is actually the funniest thing I've ever seen. He really let Twitter banter get to him. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining us for another wonderful episode of Worldwide Football. Thank you guys for Will always loves making these videos for you. Tune in after this weekend. I will be done with school soon for more videos will tend to be made after, when Christmas comes around. Have a great happy holidays and make sure to follow our social media, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time.